not look at me so. A smile better suits a hero.
We did everything right. Everything that was asked of us, and still it came to this.
Thank you for pitying an old fool.
Be proud, my friend. Be proud.
Completely and utterly fine. Better than fine. Hale and hearty and still alive to mourn those who are not. Who I failed to protect when they needed me most.
You, who are our future. Tell me this, and tell me true. Has your journey been good? Has it been worthwhile?
I had never played an MMO that had sucked me in so much before this. There's something about this game that wouldn't let me go. Even while playing through the slower paced openings to the game to Heavensward, I couldn't seem to put it down for any reason. The story and the characters just kept me in this grasp that I couldn't stop thinking about. This one video game has consumed every one of my thoughts for about a good 2 years. Here's the thing. This game has given me so much to think about. What does it mean to handle loss? How do you live with your past actions? How do we challenge our knowledge to grow to be better people? And what does it mean to live and have lived? What do you do when you are faced with loss? Do you curl up and hide and wallow in your failures? Do you get angry and throw that anger towards others? Do you become single-minded to find a resolution to the problems you face? Heavensward tackles these questions in several ways through its characters. Every person in Heavensward has to handle what the Dragonsong War is doing to those around them, whether it be the leadership of Ishgard, the people living on the streets, or even our party as they tackle the problems facing this nation. Loss, obsession, and revenge. Everything in the story of the Dragonsong War is colored by shades of these things. One of the more notable people this affects is a party member and the Azure Dragoon himself, Estinian. You can first get introduced to Estinian before Heavensward even starts through the Dragoon job questline. Through this questline, you learn that at a young age, his parents were murdered by dragons and he was taken in by Alberic, the Dragoon job teacher, and trained to be a Dragoon. He rose up to the top of the ranks to become the Azure Dragoon. All that fueled this rise, however, was the want to kill Nidhogg and get revenge for all the people he lost. This made him an extremely cold person to the people around him, with almost no care for anyone but himself and his one goal: kill Nidhogg. He's an angry individual through and through. It doesn't help that he carries around the eye of the big angry worm with him that slowly starts to infect his mind. After killing Nidhogg in the Eyrie, he's stained with red with the blood of his enemy. It's not after until you and your party learn that it was not the dragons, but the Ishgardians who dealt the first blow that he starts to question things. He feels no satisfaction with slaying the one who he now found a strange bit of kinship with. He joins you to the ruins of Azizla to stop Thordan. After the Pope is slain, he picks up the other eye of Nidhogg and gets possessed because of their shared want for vengeance. After saving Estinian after the final fight with the Great Worm on the Steps of Faith, he is now to deal with the loss of his goal. He eventually finds it in helping the dragons and atoning for the sins of his people.
Neither one of us had a choice. But I was blessed with something Nidhogg was not. Comrades and teachers to console and admonish me. Had I not had them to gainsay my obsession, it would surely have consumed me as Nidhogg's did him. and we would have been in all respects alike.
Obsession can be found in another different form. Eorzea, or Lady Iceheart, almost died in an avalanche after being turned away from the Holy See at a young age. After manifesting the Echo, she thought herself to be a reincarnation of Lady Shiva, an Elezen that was Hraesvelgar's lover that helped create peace between man and dragon. She was so obsessed with this idea that she was Shiva that instead of summoning her outright, Eorzea embodies the primal into her own body. She leads a faction of heretics to try and stop the war in her own way, leading them under the name Lady Iceheart. She negotiates with dragons instead of trying to fight them. It's not until you and the party meet up with Hraesvelgar that this obsession starts to come to an end. The dragon tells her she is her own person, and not Shiva as she thinks. This shatters her world and leaves her without any drive to continue. Her whole life, as she thought, was someone else's, and now that entire being was proven to be false. She has no idea where to go. Racked with guilt over her actions, she stops her people. The last time we see her, she is doing what she believed was the right way to deal with the loss of her world. She sacrifices herself by turning into the false Shiva one last time to help us get to Azizla.
Farewell, warrior of light, and thank you for showing me the way.
Both of these characters' obsessions can be found in lesser ways in other characters. Nidhogg's unbridled rage towards the Ishgardians for their betrayal. Alphinaud's failure with the Crystal Braves strives him to be a better person and move past that loss. Loss is also at the center of our stinky Dragoon's rage too. He lost all those close to him, so he lived his life for revenge. Loss, revenge, and pain. The game even asks you this question. How do you deal with loss? The Vault is a dungeon where you climb a massive church to stop Thordan from going towards Azizla to save your friend Emmerich. You get to the end and your goal is in sight. Then, while your character's guard is down...
Look out!
This one scene comes like a gut punch. One of the first Ishgardians you meet, a dear friend who took you in after you had lost everything due to a bloody banquet. The person who pleaded your case and stood by you to get into this city dies protecting you. For me, I fell into the same line of thinking that Nidhogg and Estinian had. I felt an unending rage towards the Heavensward. They killed a close ally, and I wanted to give them what they did to me. The story itself brought me to a point of wanting revenge. My own feelings fell in line with what many other characters were feeling during that point in the story. But that hatred, that wanting of revenge, is not something that can be held in the long run. It'll leave you hollow and a miserable person. Nidhogg became nothing more than rage incarnate, and our Dragoon friend became a spiteful person. I think Alfie has the right way of dealing with loss. While he wallowed in it for a while, he took what he did wrong and he learned from it. He used his pain and loss and turned it into a positive way to move forward. The past is always going to be behind you, but what can you do with the actions in the past that can affect the now? How does one become free of those actions and move forward? How does one truly become free?
Thus were the notes of the dragon song rewritten, the din of war giving way to a rising litany of peace and hope.
The want for revenge would bleed over into the waning days of Heavensward. An act of malice would cause the death of many, summoning a brand new primal, Shinryu. Alamigo was under the thumb of the Empire, and Ilberd, previous leader of the Crystal Braves, would take the rage from the refugees to form a plan to spur the Grand Alliance into a war over the city-state. He succeeded, His actions at Baelsar's wall forced their hand to face the Empire in a war, kicking off Stormblood. Stormblood has a lot going on. Between the movements in Alamigo and the push on the other side of the world to free Doma, there are themes of identity, freedom, how to deal with the past, and colonialism. It's a lot to tackle sometimes, and it can feel a little scattered on a first playthrough. I understand why, to a lot of people, this is a low point in the expansions. It's a bit much to throw all on a plate and expect everything to shine. There are things in this story that I think were important to bring up in the grand scheme of things. How far the Garleans go to subjugate people. How war affects not only the people of Eorzea, but people beyond their continent. There's just too much ground to cover, so I think it's best to start with someone's story who's closer to home. I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say this might be one of the takes people won't agree with me on. I like Lys. Like, a lot. I don't understand the huge amount of hate that she gets. Introduced to us as Yda, Lys spent years pretending to be her sister and trying to live up to her legacy. When the tragedy of Baelsar's Wall happened and Papalinimo sacrificed himself, she felt like she could no longer hide. Shedding her mask and letting down her hair, she finally revealed herself to be Lys. She's with you throughout this whole expansion. She is as much as the protagonist as you are during this stretch of this story. At the start, she feels this immense amount of guilt for what she didn't do. She feels guilty that her friend died because she wasn't able to help him. She feels guilty that she didn't stay in Alamigo and help the revolution. Lys feels like she's responsible for things and constantly drags herself down. This brings out a passion that is almost misplaced at times. She doesn't fully understand why people won't rise up against the people who keep them under their thumbs. She's called out on it too by the people she's trying to convince to join them in the resistance. She thinks what she is doing is right by charging in head first and solving the problem as fast as she can. She wants to redeem herself in the eyes of those people who said she abandoned them. She tags along with you to Doma so that she can help in some way. She's trying her hardest and wearing her heart on her sleeve the whole time. It isn't until she has a talk with Hien, the leader of the Doman resistance, that she starts to slow down and try to understand. People cannot be spurred to action so quickly. It takes time and things to bring them hope. So she decides then and there to look towards the future, no longer letting the past weigh her down. When she returns to Alamigo, she takes more caution and acts more like a leader. She tries talking down to the Ananta when they summon their primal and tries to gain a common ground. After the leader of the resistance dies, she takes up the mantle and helps lead Alamigo to victory. Is Lys the most complex character? No, not really, but she is a strong, kind-hearted, caring individual. She tries her hardest to do the right things with her emotions in plain view of everyone. She doesn't hide things anymore, and she knows who she is by the end of 4.0. She is no longer living as someone else. She found herself and lifted herself out of the guilt of her past action.
But the freedom we win must be for every Alamigan, even ones like Fordola, though they may hate us, and the Ananta, though they may fear us. We'll fight, and we'll talk, and we'll find a way to make it work for all of us. Compared to all that, retaking our home will seem like the easy part.
I want to propose a question. What is your identity? Is it your past actions and memories? Or the way you are in the present and what you do in the now? Stormblood tackles this question, in my opinion, with the story of one character, Eorzea, the Viceroy of Doma. A Doman by blood, she grew up going through awful situations. Her parents died at an early age, so her aunt and uncle adopted her and abused her. She was seen as worthless. Not too long after, she was sold to a man in marriage, and then after he died, to a brothel. She was eventually able to climb her way up to a high place and got to talk to Xenos. After he crushed the Doman resistance, he placed her in charge of the region. She had nothing but hate in her heart for those around her. She ruled with an iron fist, and cruel is not even the start to how she treated the Domans. She kept this up until your party stormed the Doman Castle. It is there she is believed to have died alongside your good friend Gosetsu when the palace collapses. This isn't quite the case, as the river sweeps them both away to a small island and they survive. Yotsuyu, in the accident, lost all of her memories. She reverts back to a more innocent, gentle person. She's almost childlike in the way she behaves. Suyu, as they call her in this state, is almost an entirely different person at this point. She's treated by those around her with contempt and hatred, except for Gosetsu. She did all those nasty things, right? But she has no memory of them. Gosetsu now treats her like his own daughter, despite knowing all the harmful things she did. I would argue, without those memories, her identity is no longer that of the tyrant. And the game plays with this. She's kept under watchful eyes as her adopted brother tries everything to bring that hateful person back. When she goes into a village, the village rejects her. She comes back and her adoptive parents are waiting for her, brought back by her adoptive brother. It's then she regains her memory and returns to being Yotsuyu. This tale would end in tragedy, as after she regains her memory, she turns into a primal. We fight her, and with the last of her power, she kills her brother, finally finding some kind of peace. Yotsuyu's story is not only a tale of the tragedies of war and what can happen to victims of abuse that perpetuate a cycle of abuse, but also that when given a second chance, our past actions can come to haunt us, and that forgiveness is not always a given.
Her happiness was never to be. Not in this world. I wonder, was the fruit as sweet as he remembered?
You can find a lot more smaller stories carrying the themes as well. The Dortharl over on the Azim Steppe, and what it means to die, be reborn in the identity you are reborn with. Gosetsu's guilt over not doing what he thought was right by Hien and his father. Some of the music even carries some of the themes of the game in it. For example, the two different versions of the Alamegan National Anthem. Does it tackle all these themes perfectly all the time? No, not really, but there's so much here that I think someone can find something that they will enjoy or will be touched by in one way or another. For me, Stormblood taught me that my past actions should not hold any sort of sway about how I move forward in life, and that to obtain freedom, one must look forward and strive for a better tomorrow. Speaking of letting your past guide your actions. A flood of light had almost brought the first to the brink of calamity. When all seemed lost, the Oracle of Light, Nymphilia, appeared and stopped the flood. This only bought the world a little bit of time, as from beyond the stagnant light came beasts of marbled skin to feast upon the people of the first. The inevitable seemed to be delayed, but only for a time, and the few people remaining held up in very few places. It is said, in legend, though, that one day the Warrior of Darkness will come back and bring the night sky. 100 years after the Oracle stopped the flood, the Warrior of Light arrives on the first, trying to figure out what happened to the Scions. This is where Shadowbringers truly begins. The world is trapped in a never-ending day that refuses to turn to night. It is truly bleak. Besides a few groups of people living to restore the world to what it was, many people seem to only be trapped in place, surviving. It's hard to recall what I was thinking while I was playing through this expansion. There was a lot of stress and life stuff happening at the time, and this was my one true escape. The story had gripped me so hard that I didn't want to stop at any point. I blazed through this so quickly, but one thing that really stuck with me here is how I think that this story is about coming back from the worst and moving forward. Do you just give up hope and wallow away your days? Do you shut yourself off and fill your days with nothing but endless indulgence? Do you do everything you can to face a seemingly insurmountable obstacle to bring back hope? Or do you throw away your humanity to try to bring back what you lost? There's a lot of feelings here for me, and I'm honestly not sure how to go about talking about this story here. I think I can, however, sum up how I feel with this expansion with just an exploration of its antagonist, Emmett Selk.
I am Emmett Selk, Asian.
Introduced as the previous ruler of Garlemald, Emperor Solstice Galvis, Emmett Selk is one of the few remaining Asians to be unsundered. The de facto head of the effort to rejoin the shards, so to speak. This man has an energy about him, a charisma that is just unmatched by any other villain before him. He's sarcastic, scheming, a little sassy, and just very enthralling. He never once seemed to care to hide who he is. His words drip with both a sass and a sly truth. He doesn't seem to actively get in your way either. Go on and play, O warrior of light, this is all just a game to me. I always got this little itch in the back of my head that questioned if he was truly evil. He keeps helping us. He's telling us about everything. Why would he do that? Why would he keep pushing us forward? Then it happens. All you did, everything you did, was all a part of his plan all along. Allow you to absorb so much light that you become the final key to sending this world into yet another calamity and return the first to the source. You had been tricked, fooled, bamboozled, lured into a trap that was of his making all along. So, after resting and getting enough energy to go to the bottom of the ocean to finally face him and save the first, you discover something that made me have to stop and reflect. The City of Ancients, Amaran. A song called Beneath Dark Waters starts playing, and in the background is a clock. Your time is running out. Their time was running out. You walk through a city of ghosts. Cloaked figures 3 times taller than you tell you of a group called the Convocation working on a project to save them. They were going to sacrifice half the population to save everything they held dear. They thought it was just, but in the end, that didn't save them. As you reach the largest building on your path, you finally meet with him once again. The entire city, the shades you had been speaking to, all of it was a construct of his design. A vision of the past that seemed to be stuck in time right before the downfall of the ancients, right before they were sundered, right before the final days. Emmett, amused by the fact that you are still bent on challenging him and not succumbing to the light, begs you to find him at the end of the path. So he brings you through a vision of those final days. Their magic runs wild, creating many beasts of terror and calamity. The sky burns red, the shades flee for their lives. All of this is still a part of Emmett's construction. This man has done so much just to bring back his friends. He slaughtered thousands of innocent lives because in his mind, they do not truly live. He believes everything he is doing is just and the correct way to bring back his perfect world. Emmett Selk is a man who lost everything and is desperately clawing at any way he can get back to the old days. But we can't let things stay stagnant. We have to move forward into the future and start walking a new path. While we walk that path towards the end, however, we should always do one thing. Remember the mistakes of the past. Remember that they once lived.
Look at me. I have lived 1,000 of your lives. I have broken bread with you, fought with you, grown ill, grown old, sired children, and yes, welcomed death's sweet embrace.
I would keep talking about this expansion, but I believe that this one is best experienced on your own. It is still one of my favorite Final Fantasy stories to date, and I think that it took a while for the themes to finally smack me dead in the face, but it showed me one thing. The past is behind you. You don't have to live in that or strive to stand still in your failures. Put up your head, look towards the sky, and fly into a new tomorrow. Now, I think it's finally time to start walking to the end.
Excuse me? You're the Warrior of Darkness, aren't you?
I think I will tackle the next part of the story in 2 parts. So let's go from one villain to another. At the tail end of Shadowbringers, a new antagonist is introduced. This crazy, bombastic, dramatic weirdo. He's the most animated character, throwing his hands around and dancing around the room, giving crazed monologues. He's unpredictable. The only thing he wants? To end everything. Fan Daniel is a force of nihilism that touches every part of this expansion.
I am Fan Daniel, and may I say what a pleasure it is to finally make your acquaintance.
Fan Daniel is the smoking gun that starts the final days. He wishes for the final days because he truly believes that nothing is worth living anymore, and he wants to drag everyone down with him. Nothing encapsulates his power over the first part of the story like your trip to Garlemald, a once proud nation brought to ruin by both him and Xenos. This stretch of the game is the most depressing part of the game. You can try to help people, but they're just gonna refuse your help. Their pride stops them receiving the aid they need. This causes so much more death than what is needed. Quintus Fancina, leader of the First Imperial Legion, is holding onto a thread that they can survive this unwinnable situation for them. The entire time I was playing this section, there was this never-ending sense of dread. There was no hope here, and what little there was for the Garleans was snuffed out pretty quick. Nihilism, the rejection of all religious and moral principles in the belief that life is meaningless. It's not something that I know a lot of people in my life believe. For me, it was hard to understand where Fandaniel fell down this line of thinking, and then I went to Elpis. Back in the past, before he was granted the seat of Fandaniel, he was the head researcher of Elpis, Hermes. This man had empathy for all the living beings in his care. He was so empathetic that it was almost a fault. The others around him all viewed the creatures of Elpis as experiments and nothing more. But Hermes felt like everything there deserved a chance to live. So how does someone who has so much understanding for creatures' lives become someone that only really wants nothing but wanton destruction? Well, it all comes from a little bird. Hermes had one massive question that he wanted the answer to, but all the tests in Elpis were not giving the answers he craved. So he made one of his own, a creature made out of something other than ether. He made a creature made out of dynamis, a little bird named Meteon. This childlike creature had the ability to feel and reach other people through their emotions. She could read minds and emotions through this power called dynamis. To find the answers to his questions he so desperately wanted, he set Meteion and her sisters into space to find the answers. What comes back is something, well, not to his tastes. All the creatures that Meteion met gave the exact same answer in some shape or form. There is no meaning. There is only death and suffering out there. There is no meaning, only death. This not only ruins Meteion, changing her innocent demeanor to a rather disturbing one, but Hermes follows suit. He slowly melts into nihilism. He was given the answer of the uncaring void. There is no meaning, only suffering. For if one stares into the void too long, the void stares back. In the face of unyielding despair, how do you react? Do you give in, letting it overcome you and take your mindset to a far-off place? Do you fight it, rejecting it full-heartedly and never letting it take hold of your heart? Or do you accept it, live with it, take it in stride, and come out the other side stronger? Despair, suffering, hurt, and loss are something that will happen regardless in life. It is something you can never truly escape. There will be times in your life where everything seems like it's crashing down around you. Times where an endless void of sadness will seem like it takes hold on your heart and never lets go. It's hard to push through that, trust me, I know. I've had lives where there are so many peaks and valleys I don't know what to do. There are times where it seems like my own end of days were upon me. There are times where I saw those times and, much like the ancients, decided to prolong the inevitable. I made a construct to hide behind and hoped that it would go away. My own zodiac, so to speak. But, much like that plan, it would just keep requiring more and more sacrifices. Hiding behind something instead of facing that something head on, for the most part, does not work. You sacrifice who you are to avoid that suffering. The longer you avoid it, the more you get lost. Vana knew this. She gave up her own being and what some would call a utopia to sunder the world. She created only more suffering in its wake, but she knew that suffering is something that couldn't be avoided. You can face it head on and become stronger for it. That's the only way you can face down this endless, uncaring void. You take your suffering, compound it with everything you have ever learned, and become stronger. Every loss, every fight, every happy moment, every little thing. Take it all into your being. Even as the final days raged on, we never stood down. Even in the face of that overwhelming despair, our friends stood and fought. When Vana gave us the choice to give up and run away using the moon, we decided to fight. We decided to go to the end of existence. Our suffering, our pain. It helped us grow. It made us stronger. So we go to the end of existence and are met with that avatar of the uncaring void. One by one, people start getting taken away from us, and we are met with dead worlds encountered by the Black Bird on our journey. We start with the dragons who, war after war, were left with a rotting planet and waiting to die. The Azure Dragoon fights against their despair by sharing with them the tale of Midgard-Zormr. He's giving them the lesson he learned in Heavensward to the dragon's shade. To break a cycle of despair, you must be willing to face it head on. He then disappears, giving us a way forward. We are then greeted by a race that found the solution for immortality. This did not bring them joy, however. It only brought them despair, as they found nothing left to live for beyond their mortality. They tell us to abandon our want to know more. They saw the heat death of the universe, and yet still we do not relent. Y'shtola and Urianger decide to fight this fight. Knowledge may bring pain and despair, but it can also bring hope and happiness. After Y'shtola and Urianger disappear, another dead world stands in our way. A race of machines that have waged many a war, but have left at a standstill. They see no more ways to move forward and are left stagnant. Nothing here ever changes, but G'raha Tia moves us forward, reminding us that it's not the past that binds us, it's the present that we live in and must move forward with. After G'raha Tia leaves us with a crystal path forward, we are met with one last world with no life left to stop us and nothing left to say. Despite there being no one here, there was still Meteion, this fear, this loneliness. These things are here to stop us from moving forward, but these things are part of life, and they should not hold you back and help you get up from the worst to become stronger. After Alisaie and Alphinaud leave us, we are left alone. But not truly. The shades of those who helped us along the way, their words push us forward. Faced with all the despair life has to throw at us, all the suffering, we walk towards the end and eventually find the light of a new day dawning at the end of it all.
All of which is to say, expand your horizons, go forth and seek discovery.
The rains have ceased, and we have been graced with another beautiful day.
Save your tears for the morrow. You may be sure we will have ample cause to shed them, be they for joy or despair.
To ignore the plight of those one might conceivably save is not wisdom, it is indolence.
You made the right decision. And I can finally feel proud of the part we played in helping this world survive.
You, who are our future. Tell me this, and tell me true. Has your journey been good? Has it been worthwhile?
This game has brought me to tears on several occasions. Loss, despair, rage, hate, happiness, whimsy, and adventure. In Elpis, you are asked by a question by Vana that you never fully get to answer. I want to answer that question in my own way now. My journey has been rough. A mess of emotions that I can never seem to fully grasp and take hold of. A storm of troubles that never seem to quell. There are peaks and there are valleys. I've had times where things seem so dark that I thought I would never see the light of day again. Yet, throughout all those struggles and pains, I had to overcome them. I had taken the winds of that swell of life and rode them towards a better tomorrow, creating for myself a way of life that helps me be better, learn more, and become stronger. Suffering is always going to be there. It's never, ever going to fully go away. Scars will be there years later, but there is one thing I know now. To live is to suffer, and to suffer is to live. To take the good with the bad and overcome life's struggles. Take those emotions inside you and project them outward in a way that helps the world around you and helps you live life to the fullest. The journey has been hard, but it has been worth it, and I hope it stays that way.
On those waters, became one. Streams, rivers, and lakes reaching for the horizon, and far beyond they carry onward, however changed with each brief reflection.
Hey, thanks for making it to the end of the video. What's your favorite part about Final Fantasy XIV's story? I hope to get the next video out a little bit faster than I got this one out, so go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you know when I next upload. In the meantime, why don't you check out my previous videos? I have one on Hades, and I also have one on Final Fantasy XIV. I hope to see you next time. Bye!